Well, the short answer to that is all kinds of materials. There's a wide variety of metals that can be welded with the MIG process. It gets kind of complicated, so we'll probably address individual materials further down the road. The key, however, is the proper wire, the proper gas, to be able to make those welds successfully. And like I said, we'll address those almost on an individual basis further down the line. Typically, probably the number one answer on that is you got your amperage way too high, or you're traveling way too slow. One of the other things that happens is your weld bead is way wider than it needs to be as well. So that would be my advice would be just cut the amperage down a little bit. Okay. We get another question on the forum. A fellow wrote in that his beads are very ropey and rounded or humpy looking. What's the problem that he has? Well, he's not watching the bead. What you have to do to solve the problem like that is to slow down a little bit to give the weld metal time to wash into the base metal and form a flatter bead, or perhaps even turn up the current a little bit to get a little bit hotter puddle. Got a good question today. The fellow wrote in that he's changed wire sizes, he changed the contact tip, he changed the drive rolls so that he can accommodate the new size wire, but he's still having feeding problems. And so he wants to know what else he has to do. Well, one of the things to consider, besides changing your wire feed or your contact tip and your drive rolls, is your wire liner. Now, typically liners can accommodate more than one size of wire. So it isn't always necessary to change to a different liner. But one of the things to consider is that over time, dirt builds up and that can cause feeding problems. So even if you aren't changing wire size, sometimes when you have feeding problems, the only solution is to change the liner. So that's something to bear in mind, because that's a kind of one of those subtle problem things that you wouldn't expect. Good question, something to consider. Well, one of the first things you have to take into consideration is, what is wire welding? What type of wire welding are you going to be interested in? Because there are basically two types that we're going to deal with. One is a flux cord wire welding, which uses no gas. The machines typically are a little less expensive. There are certain advantages to it. If you're going to be welding outside where there's wind, there's a number of really strong considerations for the flux cord process. Then on the other hand, you have the MIG welding process, which requires a gas shield, which then by that nature means you're going to have gas bottles, hoses, regulators, but the weld produced is very clean. There's no slag to clean off. So there's a number of real advantages there. One of the things we're going to do is on MIG Monday is start to cover these advantages and the questions that you might have about the MIG welding process. Thanks for that question. And if anyone else has any further questions on that or any other topic concerning MIG welding, feel free to ask them on Weld.com or Facebook.